Hi, this is Robin Tull. I'm President and CEO of Tull Financial Group, and we're coming to you again from the Orange Couch, where we hope this information has been helpful in your journey to financial success. So this time we're doing a little something different. We have a guest, Mark Papen, who is a retired colonel from the United States Air Force. He also has recently retired from the private sector in that area to security services. And today we just thought we would talk the practical side of transitioning from an emotional, psychological impact as you move into retirement. And Mark, what I generally ask people and say, hey, paint me a picture of what retirement looks like. And when you think of that for yourself and for your wife, what did it look like a year ago?
No, that's a great question, Robin, because I think people wrestle with that more than anything else. What is retirement? Is it going to be what everybody else is doing? Is it what people are telling me I should do? And it's probably the most asked question when you talk about retiring. They say, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And so I think, number one, most importantly, you really have to think about it. You have to take some deliberate time, even a year out or more, and start thinking about what that means to you. And most importantly, in my case, and if you've got a significant other, I think it's extremely important to include your family, to include your spouse, because it's not just I'm retiring and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And what you find out really quickly is from a marriage perspective, it's a team thing. And so I would say you have to think about it, you have to write it down, and then define it. Define it what it means to you.
Yeah. I think the thing that I've seen is the fear of running out of money is what when I talk to people. And I always tell them, I say, you tell me how long you plan to live and what your expenses are. It's the math. But it's more than that. It's the psychological side of being fearful of what if I do run out? Did you and your wife ever experience that?
Absolutely. And I think as you run up into your 50s and get closer to that point, you're constantly thinking about it. I know every time I would take time off from work, I would spend a week, literally, probably at least a couple hours every morning during my Christmas break, taking my notes, thinking about it. Do I have enough money? And what I found out was that you could be relatively confident, but in my case, and I only speak for myself, it really took the relationship that we started with you about 5 years ago to build that confidence and to really get that validation and all those other little things I wasn't thinking about to get me to that point. But once you find out that you can feel confident from a financial perspective, then the doors open up and you can really feel comfortable about what you want to do to live a purposeful life. What do you want to do after retirement? But if you're concerned about finances, that really is a hedge against thinking about what you want to do and what might be possible.
So, Mark, I'm sure there were some things that you had to plan in advance to get ready for this, just like you did at work. Tell me, share some of those with our audience.
Sure. I'll tell you, one of the first things that I recognized was you live for years and you're thinking about your financial stability, your financial health, and you work so hard on that and you save. But I learned really quickly there's a whole entire different side of the world after retirement, and that is, how are you going to live? How are you going to be purposeful? How are you going to enjoy yourself? How are you going to be passionate? And so what I started to do was I started reading. And I literally, within that, probably the year before I retired, I read about 5 books on the passionate side, how to live, how to survive after retirement. And I started writing things down. So as I came to the retirement point, I kind of created a wheel for myself. I call it a wheel and spokes. So if you can imagine a wheel with the spokes representing what are those most important parts of your life, what do you value? Your health, your relationship, your spouse, whatever it might be, a particular activity or engagement. And then kind of as goals, you start writing those little objectives down. What are you going to do? I'm going to get out once a week and do this. I'm going to call this person and try to sign up for this program. So I created this view of what I thought retirement was going to be. And I think it's still very accurate, but most recently, I took a look at it again. And I found out some of those sub things that I wanted to do to reach those goals for those things that are most important to me weren't quite hitting the mark.
Right.
I probably got to about maybe 50, 60% of them, which was good, but it gives you an opportunity to reevaluate. So the transition's great, set your expectations, write them down, And then I would really say, take another look at them in a year from now. See if they're still there and how you're doing.
Yeah, we're going to have some of these books that Mark is referencing. I mean, one of the books that I referenced earlier was Younger Next Year, which really was, I find, in the area of health. Another one, which you mentioned, the blue zones.
Sure.
There is a difference of how you think and how you act and how people treat you. There's a book, Breaking the Age Code, which we'll put as a reference too. It's how your beliefs about aging determine how long and well you live. And I think it is what I've seen, that people can sometimes treat you differently too, especially as you get older. And it's something to be prepared for. You probably haven't experienced that yet because you're just 1 year in, but any thoughts in that area?
There's a lot of truth to it, and you talk. There's terms like ageism or age discrimination or whatnot, and there is a little bit of a sense. I think I'll probably feel it as I get older, but people do treat you differently. People recognize your age and act to what they think might be appropriately. Now, in my mind, I still feel 20.
Sure.
But when they look at me, they're like, okay, well, this guy might not understand this, and you see somebody explaining something a little bit more than maybe what you need, which is okay, but it is an experience that you go through, so be ready for it and determine how you're going to react to it.
Yeah, right. And I think the thing that you mentioned a little bit is the relational side of things. I remember a friend of mine who's a CPA, and when he transitioned in this particular area, when he was home spending a lot of time with his wife would complain to my wife and say, wow, he's rearranging the refrigerator and he's driving me crazy. And so, you probably weren't rearranging the refrigerator, but you're spending more time with your spouse or significant other.
Absolutely. And we've come up with a concept that I'll mention to you that I think is helpful, but there's a lot of truth into that. About 2.5 years before I actually retired, because of COVID and whatnot, my company had me working from home. That was an incredible training grounds. My mom used to tell me, well, if you guys can survive, me and my wife, if you guys can survive in the house for 2 years, you're probably going to be able to make it on in retirement. But it took a lot of trial and error. And I did find myself doing some of that stuff. You're at home a little bit more. You want to be helpful. So next thing you know, I'm unloading the dishwasher and I'm up doing this and that. But I may not be in the right order of what things need to happen. So my wife was helpful in keeping me directed that way. But you do have to think about it. But the concept that we kind of came up with was we have to understand that in retirement, there is he time and there's she time, but there's we time. And if you can organize yourself in that manner, thinking I'm going to have my certain hobbies or the luncheons I'm going to go out with my friends and my wife is going to go out and participate in these activities, but we're always coming together. We're always going to come together and have that we time. Then I think you can find a balance, really, because that all exists.
Yeah, what I hear you're saying that you've got to be intentional. You've got to plan ahead. I think of a couple that we work with who moved to an area, to a retirement community that had a university, and that university provided classes for them to go to take and to even have testing. And so it was that idea of continual learning, even beyond retirement. And I'm sure you probably have done some things too in that area.
Absolutely. One person told me that one of the things you want to make sure that you do in retirement is don't stop doing a lot of things you were doing before. And that has to do with the learning aspect. It has to do with the reading. One important thing that I found, so in the workforce, not everybody does different things, but a lot of people are on the computers. They're up with technology. They know how to communicate. Are they texting? Or, what are they doing from a communications, the video chats and this and that? After you leave retirement, you're not doing that. You start to lose it. And my recommendation is stay on top of it. Find out, and if you got kids, those are a great resource. Find out what the current this is and the quickest way to do this, because as you get into your 70s, 80s, and 90s, that will become extremely important for you to still be independent in life.
Mark, you mentioned the workforce. I've always heard that you're doing projects in the Air Force, you're planning ahead, you're working with people daily, you're going to lunch with them, and all of a sudden that platform goes away. Did you experience that at all?
I did. I've experienced that, and a lot of friends I've had have experienced that as well. I have a neighbor that recently retired, and he was pretty high up in his company, and he believed that because of his level of importance once he retired, they were still going to come back to him and ask that question and how you did that. And he told me He didn't get a single phone call after the first year.
Wow.
And that's not a bad thing. It just means that your relationships are going to change. And so you have to be ready for that and keep your eyes open. I have an opportunity to go to the gym a few times a week. We belong to a church. I joined a Master Gardeners program with the city of Suffolk. And there's a number of other organizations. And all you have to do is reach out and be open to new ideas. And don't be afraid. Be deliberate. Ask the guy that's over there in the corner a question, and you might find there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I think that you talk about the gym, and I actually in a aerobics class where we have 50-year-old, 60-year-old, and we have an 80-year-old, and we have a great time. We spend a lot of time together. Very intentional about that. We even have an award called the Younger Next Year Award. And what that is that your age may not change, but your steps, number of steps you do, your heartbeat, your weight, all of these things. And it's kind of fun. We have these little goals that we set. And it is in the area of health, it's very important to be intentional there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually having a conversation with an older gentleman in the gym the other day, and he was well up into his 70s. And I asked him, I said, are you getting in shape for something, or what's your experience with the gym? And he said something that was shocking, and it's kind of set me on a track to make sure that I stay where I need to be health-wise. And he says, I just want to make sure I can always pick up my grandkids. So from a health perspective, his legs, his back, that's what's important to him, the practical side. And so I've kind of taken a different view from a health perspective. I don't want to go in the gym and say, my goal is to bench 225 and this, and because as you get older, joints go, but you want to maintain a practical side of health and make sure that you're participating in something that you can do for your whole life and it makes sense. And maybe you want to work on those things so that you can pick up your grandkids when you're 80 years old. Yeah,
so what I think is no one approach is perfect, and you've got to find an approach that's right for you. And Mark has just simply shared a few approaches and things that he and his wife have done. In summarize, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I would say that number one, be deliberate. Number two, a year out, up to retirement, start writing things down. What does retirement mean to you? What's important for you in your life? And here's another piece of it as well. What don't you want to do?
Yeah.
I no longer want to go into an office every day. I no longer want to have to get up at 6:30 in the morning. And then that also helps you define what you want to do in retirement. So be deliberate, write it down, and then review it occasionally to see how you're doing.
Great advice, Mark. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you also for your service. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
We want to thank the audience for joining us today. We hope this information was helpful as you transition from the practical side of preparing for retirement. Please join us again next month from the Orange Couch. And for that, thank you.